It was a bustling Thursday afternoon at Greenfield Market, a lively supermarket known for its friendly staff and fresh produce. Customers pushed carts filled with essentials through the brightly lit aisles, chatting and laughing as the store's upbeat playlist hummed in the background. Behind Register 3 stood Samantha Sam Reeves, a young cashier in her early 20s. Lonely monkeys looking at Samantha, with her curly brown hair pulled back into a ponytail, sharp green eyes, and a confident demeanor. She was known for her quick wit and firm beliefs. Sam's shift had been routine, until a man wearing a bright red MAGA hat stepped into her line. The man, Matthew Langston, was in his late 40s with a warm smile that contrasted with the bold lettering on his hat. Tall and broad-shouldered, he carried himself with the ease of someone accustomed to navigating life's challenges. He placed a modest collection of groceries on the conveyor belt: fresh vegetables, a loaf of bread, and a carton of milk. Sam's usual polite smile faltered as she caught sight of the hat. Her chest tightened and her hands froze over the scanner. Memories of heated family debates and divisive news headlines flashed in her mind. To Sam, that hat wasn't just an accessory. It was a statement that embodied intolerance and everything she stood against. Her voice cut through the hum of the store. "We don't serve people who spread messages like that." The line of customers behind Matthew grew still, their whispers and side glances filling the silence. Matthew looked up, startled but calm, his dark eyes meeting Sam's. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice steady. "I'm just here to buy my groceries." Sam folded her arms across her chest, her resolve hardening. "It's not just groceries, it's what you're representing with that hat." The air grew tense. A woman in a floral blouse at the back of the line shook her head, while a man muttered, "Ridiculous," abandoning his cart altogether. Matthew sighed and reached into his pocket, pulling out a $20 bill. He placed it gently on the counter. "For the trouble," he said quietly. "Keep the change." He packed his groceries into reusable bags and looked at Sam one last time. His gaze wasn't angry, just heavy with disappointment. "Have a good day." Sam watched him leave, her heart pounding. The murmurs of the other customers buzzed around her. "It was uncalled for," the woman in the floral blouse muttered as she approached the register. "People have a right to their opinions." Sam scanned the groceries silently, her mind replaying the interaction. She had stood up for her beliefs, hadn't she? But as she watched Matthew's retreating figure, a small knot of doubt formed in her chest. That night, Sam lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment. Her mind was restless, shifting between pride and unease. She had always been outspoken, a trait she'd inherited from her mother, a community activist. But for the first time, she questioned whether her conviction had gone too far. The next morning, the mood at Greenfield Market was subdued. Sam greeted her coworkers with a forced smile, sensing something was off. Her manager, Linda Chase, a composed woman in her 40s, approached her with a clipped tone. "Sam, we need to talk." "No." Sam followed Linda into the manager's office, her heart pounding. She expected a reprimand, maybe a lecture on customer service, but nothing could have prepared her for what Linda said next. "Do you know who that man was?" Sam blinked, confused. "He was just a customer." Linda slid a printed article across the desk. The headline read, "Matthew Langston, philanthropist and owner of Greenfield Enterprises." Below was a photo of Matthew, smiling in front of one of the many stores he owned. Sam's stomach dropped. "He owns this store?" she whispered. Linda nodded grimly. "And he's made it clear he doesn't want you working here anymore." Sam's breath caught. "Wait, you're firing me?" Linda's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. "Effective immediately. I'm sorry, Sam, but this decision comes from the top. Take this as a lesson. Your beliefs don't belong in the checkout lane." Sam packed her belongings in a daze, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. As she left the store, a mixture of regret and anger simmered inside her. That evening, Sam sat alone at her kitchen table, scrolling through articles about Matthew Langston. What she found surprised her. Matthew wasn't just a wealthy businessman, he was a community leader who had funded scholarships, organized food drives, and helped rebuild local businesses after a devastating flood. One interview stood out. In it, Matthew spoke about his late brother, a Marine who had been a proud supporter of the MAGA movement. "This hat reminds me of him," he had said. "It's not about politics for me. It's about honoring his memory and the values he lived by: loyalty, service, and family." Sam closed her laptop, her throat tight. She had judged him without knowing his story. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She picked up her notebook and began to write. For hours, she poured out her thoughts, her anger, her guilt, her memories of growing up in a politically divided household. By the time she finished, she had a plan. The next day, Sam sat at her desk and composed an email to Matthew Langston. It took her hours to find the right words, but when she was done, the message was simple. Subject: my apologies. Dear Mr. Langston, I owe you an apology. My actions at the register were unprofessional, and I let my personal feelings cloud my judgment. I've since learned more about you and the work you've done for this community, and I deeply regret the assumptions I made. If you're willing, I'd like the chance to apologize in person and learn from my mistakes. Sincerely, Samantha Reeves. She hesitated for only a moment before pressing send. The next morning, a reply awaited her. Subject: let's talk. Samantha, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your willingness to take responsibility. Let's meet tomorrow at noon at Cornerstone Cafe to discuss this. Best regards, Matthew Langston. Sam stared at the email, relief and anxiety coursing through her. She had no idea what Matthew would say, but she knew she had to face him. Sam arrived at Cornerstone Cafe 20 minutes early, a mixture of nerves and determination weighing on her shoulders. She had dressed carefully in a simple blouse and dark jeans, hoping to convey respect without seeming overly formal. The notebook she had used to process her thoughts sat on the table in front of her, a safety net in case her words failed her. She glanced around the cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries doing little to ease her tension. You aren't. When Matthew walked in, she recognized him immediately. He exuded calm confidence, his tall frame moving with purpose as he scanned the room. Their eyes met, and he gave her a polite nod before approaching the table. "Ms. Reeves," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you for meeting me." "Please, call me Sam," she said, standing to shake his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to this." They settled into their seats, a brief silence stretching between them. Sam noticed how composed Matthew seemed, as though he had navigated countless situations like this before. For a moment, she envied his calm demeanor. Well, Matthew began, breaking the silence. "You said in your email you wanted to apologize. I'm here to listen." Sam took a deep breath, her hands gripping the edges of the notebook. "Mr. Langston," she started, her voice trembling slightly, "I can't express how sorry I am for how I treated you. I let my personal beliefs get in the way of doing my job. I was so focused on what I thought was right that I didn't stop to think about who you were or what your story might be." Matthew nodded, his expression neutral. "I appreciate the apology, Sam, but I'm curious. Why did you react the way you did? What was it about me, or my hat, that struck such a nerve?" Sam hesitated, unsure how much to share. But she had asked for this meeting, to be honest, so she pressed on. "Growing up, politics were always a source of tension in my family. My mom was an activist, always fighting for causes she believed in. My dad, well, he was more conservative. They argued constantly, and it made me see political symbols as something divisive, something to be opposed. When I saw your hat, it brought all of that back. I didn't see you as a person. I saw you as a symbol of everything I've been taught to fight against." Matthew leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "I see," he said after a moment. "That explains a lot. But you know, Sam, people are more than the symbols they wear. That hat isn't about politics for me. It's about family. It reminds me of my brother and the values he stood for. It's not about division, it's about loyalty, service, and love." Sam felt a lump rise in her throat. "I've read about your brother," she said softly, "and about the work you've done in the community. I realize now how wrong I was to judge you without knowing anything about you. I'm so sorry for the assumptions I made." Matthew studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned forward, his tone firm but not unkind. "Sam, we all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after them. I'm glad you've taken the time to reflect, but apologies alone aren't enough. It's about action." Sam nodded quickly. "I understand. I want to do better, to learn from this. I don't want to be the kind of person who judges others without understanding them." Matthew seemed to consider her words. "I'll be honest with you, Sam. When this first happened, I was angry. Not just because of how I was treated, but because of what it represented. This store is my father's legacy, and I've worked hard to make it a place where everyone feels welcome. What you did undermined that." Sam's stomach sank, guilt washing over her. "I know, and I can't take back what I did, but I promise, if there's any way I can make it right, I'll do it." Matthew's gaze softened. "I believe you mean that, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm willing to give you a second chance, but it comes with conditions. You'll need to undergo training on inclusivity, empathy, and professionalism, and I expect you to lead by example if you return to the store." Sam blinked in surprise. "You're offering me my job back?" "I'm offering you an opportunity," Matthew corrected. "Whether you succeed or not is up to you." Tears welled in Sam's eyes as relief and gratitude overwhelmed her. "Thank you," she said earnestly. "I won't let you down." Matthew nodded. "I hope not. And remember, respect isn't about agreeing with everyone. It's about seeing their humanity, even when you don't understand or agree with them." The conversation shifted after that, becoming less tense and more reflective. Matthew shared stories about his brother, his journey as a business owner, and the challenges he had faced in building a company that balanced values with inclusivity. Sam listened intently, her notebook forgotten as she absorbed his words. By the time they parted ways, she felt a sense of clarity and purpose she hadn't experienced in years. The following weeks were some of the most challenging of Sam's life. The sensitivity training Matthew required was intense, forcing her to confront her biases and reflect on how they had shaped her interactions with others. She attended workshops, read articles, and participated in group discussions, all of which opened her eyes to perspectives she had never considered. The first time she had pursued that theory, back at Greenfield Market, Sam's return was met with mixed reactions. Some co-workers were skeptical, their trust shaken by the incident. Others were cautiously supportive, impressed by her willingness to admit her mistakes and work to improve. Slowly but surely, Sam began to rebuild her reputation. One day, as she was helping a customer navigate the store's online ordering system, Matthew walked in. Sam greeted him with a genuine smile, her heart no longer racing at the sight of him. He nodded in return, a faint smile on his face, and continued on his way. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about the progress they had both made. Sam's transformation didn't stop at the store. Inspired by her experiences, she began volunteering at local community events, organizing food drives, and mentoring new hires. She shared her story openly, not as a cautionary tale, but as an example of how mistakes can lead to growth. Months later, Sam found herself standing at the front of a staff meeting, addressing her coworkers with a confidence she had earned through hard work and reflection. "I want to thank all of you for giving me a second chance," she said, her voice steady. "This job has taught me so much, not just about work, but about people. I've learned that it's not enough to stand up for what you believe in. You also have to be willing to listen, to understand, and to respect others. I hope to continue earning your trust every day." The room erupted into applause, and Sam felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't thought possible a few months earlier. She glanced at Matthew, who stood at the back of the room, his expression one of quiet pride. Later that evening, as Sam walked home, she reflected on how far she had come. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. She had learned to see people as individuals rather than symbols, to approach life with empathy and humility, and she knew that this was only the beginning. Sam smiled as she turned the corner to her apartment building, her heart light and her steps confident. She was no longer the person who had judged Matthew Langston so harshly. She was someone better, someone stronger, wiser, and ready to keep growing. Sam's journey toward personal growth was far from over, and she knew it. While she had made strides in repairing her relationship with Matthew and regaining her footing at Greenfield Market, the incident lingered in her mind as a constant reminder of her past mistakes. What she hadn't expected was the ripple effect her story would have on others and how it would challenge her yet again. A week after her speech at the staff meeting, Sam was approached by Karen Fitzgerald, one of her co-workers who had kept her distance since Sam's return. Karen, a soft-spoken woman in her late 30s, had always been polite but reserved. That morning, as they restocked the shelves together, she broke the silence. "Sam, can I ask you something?" Karen said, her voice hesitant. Sam glanced over, sensing the weight in her tone. "Of course! What's on your mind?" Karen fiddled with a jar of pickles, avoiding eye contact. "You know, when everything happened with Mr. Langston, I thought you were completely in the wrong. Honestly, I was angry. But now, I don't know. Seeing how much you've changed, it's made me think about some things in my own life." Sam's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Karen sighed, setting the jar down. "I've been struggling with my own biases. There's a regular customer who comes in every week. He's young, tattoos all over, kind of rough around the edges. I've always assumed the worst about him, avoided making conversation. But last week, I overheard him talking to someone about how he's raising his little sister after their parents passed away. It hit me hard. I've been judging him without knowing anything about him." Sam nodded, a pang of recognition tugging at her chest. "It's easy to fall into that trap," she said gently. "I know I did. But recognizing it is the first step toward changing." Karen gave her a small smile. "Thanks, Sam. I guess I just wanted you to know that your story, it's made me want to be better too." As Karen walked away, Sam stood in the aisle, her thoughts racing. She had been so focused on her own growth that she hadn't considered how her journey might inspire others. The idea filled her with a sense of responsibility and a renewed determination to keep moving forward. That afternoon, Sam was surprised when Linda approached her with a new opportunity. The store was hosting a community event to support local charities, and Linda wanted Sam to take the lead in organizing it. "I think this could be a great way for you to connect with the community," Linda said. "It's also a chance to show everyone how far you've come." Sam hesitated, unsure if she was ready for such a high-profile role, but the challenge intrigued her. "I'd love to," she said finally. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Over the next few weeks, Sam threw herself into planning the event. She collaborated with local organizations, coordinated donations, and worked with her co-workers to create an inclusive and welcoming atmosphere. The event, dubbed Neighbors Helping Neighbors, would feature a food drive, free workshops, and a family-friendly barbecue. As the day of the event approached, Sam found herself grappling with a new challenge, her own lingering insecurities. While she had made amends with Matthew and earned the respect of her coworkers, she still struggled to forgive herself completely. Organizing the event felt like a chance to prove, not just to others, but to herself, that she was capable of making a positive impact. The event day dawned bright and sunny, and Greenfield Market's parking lot buzzed with activity. Tables were set up with donation bins overflowing with canned goods, while local volunteers manned booths offering everything from cooking demonstrations to financial literacy workshops. Families milled about, children laughing as they played games and ate free popsicles handed out by the staff. Sam moved through the crowd, her clipboard in hand, ensuring everything ran smoothly. She couldn't help but feel a swell of pride as she watched the community come together, but her nerves spiked when she spotted Matthew Langston arriving with a group of colleagues. He approached her with a warm smile. "Looks like you've done a fantastic job, Sam." "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I just wanted to make sure the event reflected the values you've always promoted: community, unity, and respect." Matthew's smile widened. "You've done exactly that. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." His words filled Sam with a sense of validation she hadn't realized she needed. But the moment was interrupted by a commotion near the donation tables. Turning, Sam saw a heated argument unfolding between two attendees. a middle-aged man wearing a patriotic-themed t-shirt, and an older woman holding a sign promoting environmental causes. Their voices grew louder as bystanders began to gather. Without hesitation, Sam hurried over. "Excuse me," she said firmly, stepping between them. "What seems to be the problem?" I asked. The man crossed his arms, his face flushed. "She accused me of not caring about the environment because of my shirt, and he called me a hypocrite for driving an SUV here," the woman shot back. Sam held up her hands. "Okay, let's take a step back. This event is about bringing people together, not dividing us. Can we agree to focus on what we have in common instead of what we disagree on?" The pair hesitated, the tension in their postures easing slightly. After a moment, the man sighed. "Fine, I'll drop it." The woman nodded reluctantly. "Thank you," Sam said, her voice calm but firm. "Now, let's get back to what matters. Helping our neighbors." As the two walked away, Sam exhaled, her heart racing. The situation had been a stark reminder of how easily conflict could arise, even in the most positive environments. But it had also reaffirmed her commitment to fostering understanding and empathy. As the event wound down, Sam found herself reflecting on the day's successes and challenges. The food drive had collected hundreds of pounds of donations, and the workshops had been well attended. But what stayed with her most was the realization that growth wasn't a one-time achievement. It was an ongoing process, filled with opportunities to learn and improve. The hope of the third week is preferable to the one time. Later that evening, as Sam helped clean up, Matthew approached her once more. "I want to thank you again for today," he said. "You've proven that you're not just learning from your mistakes, you're using them to make a difference." Sam smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. "That's all I've ever wanted." As they stood there, the sun dipping below the horizon, Sam felt a quiet confidence take root within her. She had faced her past, learned from it, and emerged stronger. And while the journey was far from over, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. The following days after the event were filled with an energy that Sam hadn't experienced in years. Her coworkers were more open, greeting her with smiles and engaging her in casual conversations. Customers seemed to linger longer at her station, sharing their own stories of growth or redemption, inspired by what they had heard about her transformation. The weight of her past actions was still present, but it had shifted into something lighter, a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. But with this newfound attention came an unexpected challenge. Not everyone was willing to let go of the past. One morning, as Sam was arranging a display of fresh flowers near the entrance, she overheard two customers talking in hushed voices. They weren't far enough away to avoid being overheard. "Isn't she the one who refused service to Mr. Langston?" one woman whispered, clutching a shopping basket. "Yeah," the other replied. "I don't care how much she's changed. Some things are hard to forgive." Sam's hands faltered over the bouquet she was holding. She stood frozen for a moment before steadying her breath and continuing her work. Their words stung, but she reminded herself that not everyone would see her growth the way she did. And that was okay. Growth wasn't about convincing others. It was about being better, day by day. Still, their comments lingered in her mind long after they had left. Later that afternoon, Linda approached her with an unusual request. "Sam, there's a group of local high school students visiting for a career day," she explained. "They're interested in learning about the behind-the-scenes operations of a grocery store. Would you mind speaking to them? You've got a knack for connecting with people." Sam blinked, caught off guard. Public speaking wasn't exactly her strong suit, but the thought of sharing her experience with young people intrigued her. Maybe her story could help them avoid the mistakes she had made. "Sure," she said, trying to mask her nerves. "I'd be happy to." An hour later, Sam found herself standing in front of a dozen teenagers in the staff break room. The students sat at a long table, their faces a mix of curiosity and boredom. Sam clutched a clipboard for reassurance, though she barely needed it. "Hi everyone," she began, her voice steady but warm. "My name is Sam Reeves, and I've been working at Greenfield Market for a few years now." Today, I want to talk about something a little different than just the technical side of our jobs. I want to share how this job taught me some of the biggest lessons in my life. Lessons about respect, humility, and what it really means to grow. Her words hung in the air, and she could see a flicker of interest spark in a few of the students' eyes. Encouraged, she continued. "A few months ago, I made a mistake," she said, her tone candid. "A big one. I let my personal beliefs get in the way of my professionalism, and I treated a customer unfairly. What I learned from that experience is that no matter how strongly you feel about something, you need to approach others with kindness and respect." She went on to share the story of her confrontation with Matthew Langston, leaving out no details. The students listened intently, some nodding as she described the lessons she had taken from her sensitivity training and her efforts to rebuild trust with her coworkers and customers. "One thing I've realized," Sam said as she wrapped up, "is that growth doesn't stop. It's not something you achieve once and then forget about. It's something you work on every day. And sometimes the hardest person to convince is yourself." When she finished, a boy in the back raised his hand. He was lanky and shy-looking, his posture slouched but his eyes curious. "Do you think you would have changed if no one had called you out?" he asked. Sam paused, considering the question. "That's a good point," she said. "Honestly, I don't know. I think it's easy to stay comfortable in your beliefs when no one challenges you. But I'm grateful that I had people, like my manager, Mr. Langston, and my coworkers, who held me accountable. They gave me the push I needed to take a hard look at myself and make changes." The boy nodded, seemingly satisfied, and another student raised her hand. "What's the hardest part about changing?" she asked. Sam smiled softly. "The hardest part is forgiving yourself. You can do everything right moving forward, but the weight of your past mistakes doesn't just disappear. It takes time and a lot of patience to let yourself off the hook. But it's worth it." The students clapped when she finished, their applause genuine. Sam felt a swell of pride as she left the room, knowing that she had made even a small impact. Later that week, Sam received an unexpected visitor at the store. Her mother, Lydia Reeves. Lydia, a passionate activist with a commanding presence, had always been a source of inspiration for Sam, but also a source of conflict. They had often butted heads over the years, their debates about politics and values leaving little room for understanding. "Mom," Sam said, surprised to see her, "what are you doing here?" Lydia smiled, her arms crossed as she leaned against the counter. "I came to see you, of course, and to do some shopping, but mostly to see you." Sam chuckled nervously. "Well, here I am. What's up?" Lydia's expression softened. "I heard about the event you organized, and about everything else. I wanted to tell you how proud I am of you." Sam blinked, her heart catching in her throat. Praise from Lydia was rare, and it meant more than she could put into words. "Thanks, Mom," she said quietly. "That means a lot." Lydia reached out, placing a hand on Sam's shoulder. "I know I wasn't always the best at showing it, but I've always admired your passion and your courage. What you've done here, owning up to your mistakes, growing from them, that takes real strength. I hope you know that." Sam felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Thanks," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment was brief but profound, a reminder that growth wasn't just about changing yourself, it was also about repairing relationships and finding common ground with the people you cared about. As the months passed, Sam continued to thrive in her new role. She became a go-to resource for her coworkers, a mentor for new hires, and a trusted confidant for customers. Her story of redemption spread beyond the store, inspiring other businesses in the area to implement their own inclusivity training programs. One evening, as she was closing up the store, Matthew Langston stopped by. He had been visiting less frequently, trusting the staff to handle things without him, but he always made a point to check in. "Sam," he said as they stood by the register, "I wanted to tell you something. The changes you've made here, your leadership, your commitment to respect and empathy, they've set a new standard for this store. And for me," Sam tilted her head, confused. "For you?" Matthew nodded. Even I've learned something from all of this. You reminded me that no one is above growth, not even the guy who owns the place. They shared a laugh, the kind that spoke of mutual respect and understanding. As Matthew left, Sam stood alone in the quiet store, reflecting on everything that had brought her to this moment. Her journey wasn't over, it never would be, but for the first time, she felt at peace with that. Growth wasn't about reaching a destination, it was about embracing the path, one step at a time. As the days turned into weeks, Sam began to notice subtle but meaningful changes in the way she approached her work and her life. The sensitivity training and her journey towards self-awareness had taught her something profound. Every interaction was an opportunity to leave a positive impact. This realization pushed her to engage with her community in ways she never had before. One Friday evening, as Sam finished her shift, she noticed a young girl sitting on the curb outside the store. The girl looked no older than 10, her thin frame hunched over as she fiddled with the straps of a worn backpack. Something about her posture struck Sam, a mix of loneliness and uncertainty. Sam walked over, crouching down to meet the girl's gaze. "Hey there," she said gently. "Are you waiting for someone?" The girl looked up, her wide brown eyes filled with hesitation. "I'm waiting for my mom," she murmured. "She went inside to talk to someone about a job." Sam nodded, her heart softening. "That's great. What's your name?" "Layla," the girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Poof. Well, Lila, it looks like you've been waiting a while. Would you like to come sit inside where it's warmer? We have a little cafe area, and I think I can find a cookie with your name on it." Lila's face brightened, a small smile breaking through her nervous expression. "Really?" "Really?" Sam replied, standing and offering her hand. Inside, Sam made sure Lila was comfortable at one of the cafe tables before fetching a cookie and a small carton of milk. As Lila nibbled on the treat, her mother emerged from the back of the store. She was a tall woman with tired eyes but a determined expression. Spotting Lila, she rushed over, relief washing over her features. "Thank you," the woman said to Sam, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't mean to leave her alone for so long. I really needed to talk to someone about the job opening." "No problem at all," Sam said with a reassuring smile. "We're always happy to help. I hope it went well." The woman nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "It did. They said they'd call me next week." Sam placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. "Good luck. And if there's anything else you need, don't hesitate to ask." As they left, Lila turned back to wave, her smile now beaming. Sam waved back, her heart swelling with a quiet sense of fulfillment. Moments like this reminded her why she had chosen to stay at Greenfield Market. Not just to earn a paycheck, but to be part of something bigger. The store wasn't just a place of commerce, it was a cornerstone of the community, a place where small acts of kindness could make a world of difference. Later that week, Sam received a surprising email from a local high school teacher who had heard about her career day talk. The teacher, Mr. Ortega, invited her to speak at an upcoming school assembly focused on personal growth and overcoming challenges. At first, Sam hesitated. Public speaking had never been her strong suit, and the idea of addressing an entire auditorium of students was daunting. But as she thought about everything she had learned and the people she had helped, she realized she couldn't pass up the chance to make a difference. The day of the assembly arrived quickly. Standing backstage, Sam felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of Matthew's words. "Respect isn't about agreeing with everyone, it's about seeing their humanity." With that thought, she stepped onto the stage. The auditorium was packed, the buzz of youthful energy palpable. Sam gripped the microphone and began to speak. I'm not here to talk about perfection," she started, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm here to talk about growth, about the mistakes we make and what we do to learn from them." She shared her story candidly, not shying away from the uncomfortable truths. She talked about her upbringing, her confrontation with Matthew, and the steps she had taken to rebuild herself. As she spoke, she noticed the students leaning forward in their seats, their attention fully on her. "Change is hard," she said as she wrapped up. It's messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes it feels impossible. But it's worth it, because when we grow, we don't just change ourselves, we change the world around us. When she finished, the auditorium erupted into applause. Sam stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the support, before stepping off the stage. Mr. Ortega approached her, a broad smile on his face. "You just made an impact those kids won't forget," he said. "Thank you for sharing your story." As Sam left the school, she felt lighter, as though a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had finally been lifted. For the first time, she truly believed in the power of her journey, not just for herself, but for others. That evening, as Sam sat on her couch reflecting on the day, she received a text from Matthew. It was brief but meaningful. "Proud of you, keep going." Sam smiled, her heart full. Growth, she realized, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something new on its foundation, one step at a time, and she was ready to keep moving forward. Want more? Check out the video on screen for another amazing story and hit subscribe to stay updated with our newest content.